conference room buzzed with chatter as I glanced at my phone, the screen lighting up with an incoming call from Tyler. I stepped into the hallway, expecting the usual, some casual small talk, maybe a question about when I'd be home. Instead, his voice came through cold and smug. "I'm divorcing you," he said, the words sharp and deliberate. "Oh, and I sold the apartment, so you'll want to figure out where you're going to live. Good luck with that." For a moment I couldn't breathe. The casual cruelty, the sheer audacity of it, was almost laughable. My fingers tightened around the phone, my knuckles going white. "You sold the apartment?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady. "Yeah," he said, almost proud of himself. "Nicole and I need a better place, something bigger, something she actually deserves." Nicole. The name confirmed everything I had already suspected. The late nights, the sudden weekend work trips, the way he barely bothered to hide his phone anymore. It had all led to this. I'd known, deep down, there was someone else. But hearing him say her name so casually, like I was the outsider in my own marriage, made something in me snap. "Okay," I replied evenly. I could practically feel his disappointment through the phone, expecting me to scream or cry. But there was no way I was giving him that satisfaction. "My name is Amelia. Up until that call, I thought I'd married someone I could trust. Tyler and I had been together for 6 years, building a life I thought was ours. A small but perfect apartment in the heart of the city, decorated with the pieces we'd chosen together. Every corner held a memory, or at least I thought it did. Now, it felt like every memory was a lie. Looking back, the signs were there. The dismissive way he'd brush off conversations about money, the patronizing smile whenever I asked about his long-term plans. I'd chalked it up to him being carefree, but now I saw it for what it was: control. Tyler had spent years treating me like someone he could manipulate, and for a long time I let him. But here's what Tyler didn't know. The apartment he thought he sold wasn't his to sell. After we refinanced last year, I had the deed transferred solely into my name. Tyler had skimmed the paperwork, signing where I told him to, never questioning the details. That carelessness was about to cost him everything. That night in my hotel room, my shock gave way to clarity. Tyler thought he was ending my life, leaving me powerless and stranded. Instead, he'd handed me the one thing I needed: leverage. My first call was to Chloe, my lawyer and longtime friend. I laid everything out, every ugly detail. "He sold the apartment?" she repeated, incredulous. "Does he know he can't do that?" "Nope," I said, my voice tight with satisfaction. "He thinks it's already done." Chloe laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He's in for a hell of a surprise." She outlined our next steps. First, notify the buyer that the sale was fraudulent, then draft a formal letter for Tyler, informing him of the legal consequences. If he spent any of the deposit, it would only get worse for him. As I hung up, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders. I wasn't the one scrambling, Tyler was. The rest of my business trip flew by. With every passing day, my focus sharpened. The betrayal still stung, but the promise of reclaiming my life and watching Tyler's house of cards collapse fueled me. The moment my plane touched down, I called Chloe. "I'm back," I said, dragging my suitcase toward the taxi line. "What's next?" "We notified the buyer," she said. "They're furious. They've already contacted their lawyer, and they're ready to cooperate. As for Tyler, I sent him the letter this morning. No response yet, but it's only a matter of time." When I opened the door to the apartment, it felt wrong. His things were still there, his jacket draped over the chair, his shoes kicked off carelessly in the corner, but the space felt cold, unfamiliar, like the home we built together had been hollowed out. I didn't have to wait long for the storm. Tyler burst through the door later that evening. his face red with anger, phone clutched tightly in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, waving Chloe's letter in front of my face. "You can't stop me from selling the apartment. It's half of mine." "No, it's not," I said calmly, arms crossed. "The deed's been in my name for months. You signed the paperwork yourself. You can't sell what you don't own." The confusion flickered across his face, followed quickly by rage. "That's bullshit." I pulled out the folder I had prepared, flipping open the deed and setting it in front of him. "Go ahead, read it. Or are you going to pretend you didn't sign it just like you pretended to care about this marriage?" For the first time in years, Tyler had no comeback. Over the next few days, his arrogance slowly gave way to desperation. The buyer pulled out, threatening legal action of their own. Chloe drafted divorce papers and a financial settlement that left Tyler with far less than he'd counted on. And me? I stayed calm, firm, detached. Lauren, my best friend, came over one night to help me box up his things. We worked in silence for a while before she finally broke it. "So, how's he taken all of this?" she asked, holding up one of his tacky sports trophies. "Not well," I said, laughing softly. "He thinks I'm bluffing." Lauren snorted. "He's never met this version of you, has he?" "No," I said, sealing another box, "but he's about to." The final showdown came when Tyler showed up with Nicole in tow. I was sitting at the dining table going through paperwork when they waltzed in like they owned the place. "So, this is where we're staying," Nicole said, her tone dripping with entitlement. "No," I said, standing up slowly. "This is where Tyler was staying. You, Nicole, aren't staying here at all." Nicole blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Tyler's confidence flickered. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "This is my apartment," I said simply. "You tried to sell it, but you can't sell something you don't own. You signed the paperwork, Tyler. You signed away your rights. This place and everything in it belongs to me." Nicole's eyes widened. "You said you sold it," she said to Tyler, her voice rising. "You said you had the money already." Tyler stammered, scrambling for an explanation, but I cut him off. "He lied," I said. "And if you're smart, you'll leave before you get dragged into his mess." Nicole took one look at Tyler, shook her head in disgust, and walked out without another word. The door slammed behind her, leaving Tyler alone with me. For the first time, he looked small, deflated, weak. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. I stepped closer, my voice low and firm. "No, Tyler, I didn't have to. But after everything you've done, I wanted to." I handed him the divorce papers. "Sign these and be out by the end of the day. Or we go to court and I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you tried to pull." His shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll go." When the door finally closed behind him, the silence felt peaceful. For the first time in years, the apartment felt like mine again. No lies, no manipulation, no weight pressing on my chest. That night, Lauren and I sat on the couch, eating takeout and toasting to new beginnings. "To fresh starts," she said, raising her glass. "And to never underestimating me again," I added. We clinked glasses and I knew, without a doubt, I'd won, not just the fight with Tyler, but the fight for myself. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past week slowly lifting. "To never letting anyone walk all over me again," I said, my voice firmer than it had been in years. The next few days felt like peeling back layers of someone else's life, shedding the version of me who had tried so hard to be the perfect wife, the perfect partner, someone who shrank herself to fit inside Tyler's narrow expectations. I began reclaiming the apartment piece by piece, not just clearing out his things, but filling the space with reminders of who I was before I lost myself in him. I rearranged the furniture, moving the couch to face the window so I could soak in the morning light with my coffee. I pulled my favourite artwork, the bold, abstract pieces Tyler had always dismissed as weird, out of storage and hung them proudly in the living room. The kitchen, once a cluttered shrine to Tyler's gadgets and takeout menus, became mine again. Tidy, functional, filled with the ingredients I actually loved cooking with. It wasn't just redecorating, it was rebuilding. Piece by piece, room by room, I was turning the apartment into a reflection of who I was, not the version Tyler had tried to shape, but the woman I'd always been underneath. Chloe called a few days later, her voice brimming with the kind of confidence that made me feel invincible. "The fraud charges are off the table," she said. "Since the buyer decided not to pursue them, they're mostly just relieved they got their money back." I exhaled, relieved for them and for myself. "But the divorce paperwork is moving along smoothly," Chloe continued. "Once Tyler signs, you'll be officially free." Officially free. The words hung in the air long after the call ended. It was strange how those two simple words could carry so much weight, relief, sadness, excitement, fear, all jumbled together. That evening, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom looking around at the space I'd once shared with Tyler. It felt larger now, the absence of his presence making room for something new, something that belonged to me alone. I opened my closet, replacing his wrinkled dress shirts with the clothes I actually loved, the ones I hadn't worn in years because Tyler thought they were too much. Bright colours, bold prints, dresses that hugged my curves instead of hiding them. Every small change felt like a reclamation, a declaration that this was my space, my life, my rules. A few days later, Tyler finally responded to the divorce papers. Chloe forwarded me the email he sent her, and I couldn't help but shake my head as I read it. "This is unnecessary. I think we can work this out without lawyers." I almost laughed. After everything, the lies, the cheating, the attempted fraud, Tyler still thought he could charm or manipulate his way out of consequences. But I wasn't that woman anymore. I wasn't the wife who swallowed her anger for the sake of peace, or the woman who ignored her own instincts because it was easier to believe his lies than face the truth. I replied to Chloe with 2 words: "Proceed immediately." The silence that followed was freeing in a way I hadn't expected. No more passive-aggressive texts, no more late-night guilt trips, no more waking up in the middle of the night wondering where he was or who he was with. The silence was mine, peaceful, strong, unshakable. Lauren stopped by that night, carrying a bottle of my favourite wine and a pizza loaded with everything Tyler used to complain about. Mushrooms, anchovies, extra olives. We ate on the floor surrounded by half-empty boxes, laughing until our sides ached. "You're glowing," she said at one point, studying me like I was a different person entirely. I smiled, wiping pizza sauce off my chin. "I feel like I'm finally breathing again." The divorce was finalized 2 months later. Tyler dragged his feet, tried to negotiate terms, even made a half-hearted attempt to guilt me into changing my mind. But Chloe shut him down at every turn, and when the judge signed off on the papers, it felt less like an ending and more like a rebirth. I was officially free, but more importantly, I was finally myself again. On the day I received the final documents, I took myself out to dinner. Alone. Not because I was lonely, but because I wanted to celebrate with the one person who had fought the hardest for my happiness, me. I ordered champagne and raised my glass to the empty seat across from me. "To the woman who finally chose herself," I whispered. The waiter smiled as he passed by, probably thinking I was toasting to some distant friend, but I knew the truth. I was toasting to the woman I'd become. The one who refused to be erased, who rebuilt her life from the ashes of someone else's betrayal and came out stronger on the other side. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt whole. Hearing the word free made my chest tighten. It wasn't just about the divorce, it was about everything I'd been carrying for years. The resentment, the self-doubt, the feeling of being trapped in a marriage that never valued me. All of it was finally being lifted off my shoulders. Tyler tried to reach out a few times, his messages bouncing between half-hearted apologies and pathetic attempts at guilt tripping me into reconciling. "I made a mistake," one read. "Can't we at least talk about this?" Another was even more desperate. "You're going to ruin me, Amelia. Is that really what you want?" I didn't reply. For once, I wasn't going to waste a second of my energy trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. He had made his choices, and now he was the one living with the consequences, not me. By the end of that first week, the apartment felt completely transformed. Not because of any big renovation, but because of the energy. The weight of Tyler's presence was gone, and in its place was a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It was mine now. Every corner, every quiet moment belonged to me. I sat on the couch one evening with a cup of tea, watching the city lights twinkle outside the window. For the first time in forever, I felt at home, not just in the apartment, but in myself. Tyler's betrayal had been a shock, yes, but it had also been a wake-up call. For too long, I had let myself believe that I didn't deserve more, that I had to settle for whatever scraps of affection and respect he tossed my way. But now I knew the truth. I was worth so much more. I wasn't just reclaiming an apartment, I was reclaiming my life. A month later, my life looked completely different. The apartment had evolved into a true reflection of who I was: bold, calm, playful, sophisticated. All the contradictions and complexities Tyler had never taken the time to understand. It felt lighter, freer, like I could finally breathe without waiting for the next criticism or dismissal. The divorce process went surprisingly smoothly. Chloe handled every detail with the sharpness I had always admired, leaving Tyler no room to argue. He signed the papers without much of a fight, probably because he realized he had no leverage. There was no dramatic confrontation, no last-minute declarations of love, just a quiet, clean break. It was exactly what I wanted. The lack of fanfare made it feel real, like we were two strangers agreeing to let go and walk away. One afternoon, while sorting through a drawer I'd avoided since Tyler left, I came across an old photo, the two of us from our early years. We were at the beach, arms around each other, smiling like we had all the time in the world. For a moment, I let myself sit with it, remembering the version of him I'd once loved, the version of myself I'd been before the cracks formed. There had been good moments. I couldn't deny that. But those moments were eclipsed by all the times I shrank myself to avoid conflict, all the times I swallowed my needs to make space for his. I slid the photo into an envelope and tucked it into the back of the drawer. Not ready to throw it away, but unwilling to leave it out in plain sight. It was a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Lauren and I celebrated the finalized divorce with dinner and drinks at a sleek rooftop bar downtown. The air was warm and the skyline stretched out before us, full of possibility. "You're glowing," she said, raising her cocktail in a toast. "Single life looks good on you." I laughed, the kind of laugh that felt like it came from somewhere deep inside me. "It's not just being single," I said. "It's being free, free to make my own choices, to live my own life, without tiptoeing around someone else's insecurities." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly proud of myself. I'd faced heartbreak, betrayal, and disappointment, and instead of collapsing, I had built something better, something that belonged entirely to me. Back at the apartment, I started thinking about the future. The space had become a sanctuary, a place where I rediscovered my voice, my preferences, my peace. But I also knew it wouldn't be my forever home. One day I'd leave, not because I was running from anything, but because I would be ready to write the next chapter somewhere new. When that day came, I wanted to leave this place full of good memories, knowing I had transformed it into a symbol of resilience and self-respect. That night, I curled up on the couch with a blanket and let the silence wash over me. I remembered that phone call, the way Tyler had laughed, so sure he was the one in control. The memory didn't hurt anymore. It made me smile. His arrogance was his downfall. My quiet strength was my salvation. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. This was the beginning of something beautiful. A life where I called the shots, where I chose my own happiness, and where no one else got to decide what I deserved. For the first time in years, I felt whole, and for the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free.